We do a lot of team workouts where you're counting on your team members. And so because we're working through adversity together as a team, it makes working through adversity like on a project much easier. All great teams know that the team gets stronger through adversity, and us just being able to do that day in and day out has been really, really special.
All right, so we are here. This is the We Are Open Circles Beyond Listening podcast. We're here today with MTNTough's founder, Dustin Diefenderfer. Did I get that right, Dustin?
It's
I'm
close.
sure I'm not the
It's
first one to ask you that.
Diefenderfer.
Diefenderfer. All right, good. Okay, I'll get it right from now on. So Dustin, we've just been chatting with Dustin before hitting record and hearing some of his story and some of what brought him to start a business and a training program and a community that's about helping people become more mentally tough, and as a way of achieving their personal and professional goals, and also to be more resilient in life. We're going to jump in and hear from Dustin. Dustin, we're going to hear your story from your own words here. But just wanted to start out and just say welcome, and we appreciate your coming on today and sharing your story and some of what you've learned along the way.
You bet. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Love being here.
So let's start out by tell us a little bit about what MTNTough is.
Yeah, so MTNTough is an authority in backcountry fitness, and our mission is to transform lives holistically. So we look at ways to transform lives physically, but also spiritually, emotionally, nutritionally. And so we want people to live their best and most abundant life through our product. And usually the way they start that is by looking for a way to get in shape. And then once they're kind of inside our ecosystem, we look for a lot of different ways to serve those athletes outside of just the physical. So a lot of mental training, spiritual, emotional, nutritional. But the authority on backcountry fitness is related to our number one gateway into our ecosystem is online training programs to get prepared for outdoor pursuits.
And specifically, you started out as a backcountry hunter. So when you talk about backcountry pursuits, is that how most people are coming into this?
Yeah. Backcountry hunting is our MTNTough's DNA. And so I grew up in Montana, and I was a lifelong backcountry elk hunter. So my dad got me into archery hunting when I was 12, and we just kind of bounced all over the West archery hunting elk. And archery hunting elk is kind of the most adrenaline pumping archery sport you can participate in the West, because elk come in bugling and screaming and looking for a fight, and then kind of being there with your bow and arrow is an amazing experience. And so we grew up doing that. That was our focus and our passion. And as a hunter, you kind of spend all year thinking and preparing for how you can pursue excellence in that area, which makes hunting a really unique sport, because hunting is kind of a lifestyle and more than a sport. And so it takes up 12 months of your year getting ready for a trip like that. So I was always looking for ways to be physically and mentally ready for that.
I tend to make the assumption that people that listen to our podcast may not be hunters, much less
Mhm.
backcountry hunters. And so that, what you're just saying, what you said there, that it's a 12-month of the year pursuit, that you're thinking about it, you're training for it, you're preparing for it, might contrast with what people think hunting is, right?
Mhm.
Like just drive up the road and kill an animal. It's not that, right?
Yeah, hunting is once it's in your blood, I think that it is much more than just going out to harvest an animal. One way we talk about it sometimes is a hunter usually starts basing a lot of major life decisions off hunting being their identity. And in backcountry hunting certainly takes that to a whole new level because backcountry hunting, you're going into the wilderness solo a lot of times, maybe with one or two other friends, unguided, on public land, and you're going in with a backpack and a bow. And then you are looking to harvest an animal with a perfectly placed arrow. And then you have to find a way to get that animal off the mountain in your backpack. And so it is, it becomes a way of life. So people start deciding where they're going to live in the United States based off, or in the world based off being a hunter, kind of what they're going to drive, the types of financial decisions they're going to make are all kind of starting to be built around this fall season and how you can have some time off and some flexibility in your schedule, and then training all year long with your bow in the backyard or at the bow shop so that you can make that shot in a really ethical way. And then it takes most of the year to be physically ready for a hunt like that. So you have to physically be ready to hike into the wilderness, stay there for 3, 5, or 7 days, um, in a bivy camp set up, and then you have to be physically ready to get an animal off the mountain and take care of that meat. So getting the animal off the mountain can be 100-pound packs. It's a lot of times with an elk, you're looking at 4 loads of 100 pounds of meat. And so if you're solo and you're 7 miles back, um, you're going to come out 4 times over 7 miles with a 100-pound pack. And then you're going to go back in empty each time to get that. So the mileage and the weight, um, really adds up. And you have to do it quickly too, because you have to preserve that meat and make sure that it's well taken care of. So all the things that go into kind of a backcountry season are a lot more in depth than I think people realize until they've gone through it a couple times.
So you talked about and I'm hearing it in your story, the physical challenge of
Mm-hmm.
backcountry hunting and just the extreme. I heard recently that an average archery elk hunter is walking something like 40 miles a day, um, in pursuit of an elk, over how, like 2 weeks, or what's your usual season like
Yeah,
these days anyways?
a typical elk hunt in the Rocky Mountain West, average is going to be 3 days, and then you're going to see a lot of like 5, 7 day hunts. But if you take like a Western elk hunter that like lives in Montana, they're going to spend probably like 20 or 30 days out in the backcountry in archery season. But that's going to be spread across a lot of 3 to 5 day trips.
Okay. Yeah. So, and you're walking and you're hiking with a heavy pack already before you harvest. Um, for those, how many miles a day do you think that is
Yeah, so like your camp is
when you're
on your
really getting
back.
after it?
Your camp is going to be on your back, and you're going to be covering like 7 to 11 miles per day.
Okay. and you're out there alone. So there's the mental component of it. So there's that physical, the mental part, being out there alone, probably some, in my experience, some frustration, or, wanting to give up. How does that mental component come in on those hunts?
The mental component is significant, and especially if you haven't grown up in the outdoors or grown up out in the mountains or the wilderness, it can be really overwhelming for a lot of people. And we love it because we're believers that manufacturing adversity in your life helps you grow and makes you a better human. And backcountry hunting is a great way to manufacture adversity in 2023, when life can be fairly easy if you're not looking for hard things to do. But the mental aspects are pretty wild if you haven't experienced a major wilderness trip. And so the the isolation and being out there alone with no escape button can be pretty daunting. And mentally, you'll see a lot of people break down from one aspect of wanting to be back to the comforts of home. So people will want to be back in their warm house, in their living room, in their kitchen, with their TV. And so that's one element. And there's also the element of weather. So the backcountry brings a lot of unpredictability in the storms that it's going to throw at you. And so, snow, wind, rain, high elevation. And so, mentally facing the adversity of unpredictable weather is another one that really you'll see wear people down mentally. And it's significant. A lot of times you'll see the high elevation, the thin air, the isolation of being away from civilization and the weather. It's quite common for people to break down and head back home early that haven't been through that before. But pushing through that is a pretty phenomenal way to grow.
And does that lead us into the spiritual aspect of it that you talked about, growing spiritually, or how does that fit into this?
The spiritual aspect for Mountain Tough is twofold. One is there is spiritual development content inside of our app, and for us, that is looking for ways for people to be better better with systems such as um, handling anger, handling adversity, knowing how to navigate through conflict and pain. And so, usually, when we're looking at that from a content perspective, it's a little bit different than what the backcountry will teach you. Um, for the backcountry, for me personally, the spiritual aspect is creation and just looking at creation and how like majestic it truly is, and being out there and seeing the mountains and the glacier carved valleys and the waterfalls, like, and the stars at night and how clear they are. The spiritual component just happens naturally for me in the backcountry because of just how beautiful creation is.
Is it? I've always felt like, also being out there in whatever, kind of raw pursuit in the wilderness, whether it's backcountry hunting or hiking, or we do, some of our programs will do a solo fast.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about control and not having control out there. There's it just becomes really clear what we're actually in charge of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you said the weather. You can't control the weather. You can't control whether you see an elk. You can't control how you feel. Maybe you got to deal with all the emotions and the physical challenges, but staying kind of faithful within that
Mm-hmm.
there's a purpose for it. Is that part of it too? Kind of putting ourselves in a situation that we're not in charge. That
Yeah.
that feels pretty spiritual to me. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong though.
No, I think that is a huge dynamic, is giving up all these like false senses we have of control in town. Those become very black and white in the backcountry of the limited aspects we do have control over, and just focusing on those and not the rest.
I'm super curious because in hearing such a detailed description of your relationship with hunting, backcountry hunting, and what it gives you, and thank you for that, I kind of have this sense that you didn't say, but this sense of, I don't know, it's almost service. And I'm just super curious about what called you into doing the mountain tough work. Like,
Mm-hmm.
was there, like, were you following something, or did you hear something? I'm really curious about that story of, like, I hear you were growing up hunting, it was in your DNA. And what drew you to want to offer that back to the community?
For sure. Yeah, I think the Mountain Tough story has always felt very God breathed to me, and it has always felt 100% like a calling. And the the formation of Mountain Tough and the whole story behind it is is a little long. I'll dive into it and let you guys kind of know how it unfolded for me. But the journey, looking back on it now in hindsight, is pretty remarkable, and kind of how it happened, and where we're at today. And the way that it unfolded was, I was always that outdoorsy Montana kid, bow hunting with my dad, and that led me to college. And I went to college here in Bozeman, Montana, at Montana State. And I always had this fascination and love for entrepreneurship. So I've always been an idea guy and love thinking of ideas and things that haven't been created yet. And so I went to Montana State and got an entrepreneurship, business, marketing, and management degree. And I think that point in my life, I started kind of letting the world shape what I should be doing, and kind of following just some general rules that the world speaks sometimes. So I got that business degree, and because I got that, I started pursuing corporate America jobs. And so I thought, because I had this business degree, that I needed some sort of excellent corporate America job. And Bozeman didn't have much to offer at that time when I graduated. It's changed a lot in the last 15 years, but there was a company that I ended up going to work for that was really, really cool for what they were doing, but it was a very corporate America type situation. And at first, I thought that was perfect. I was like, I have a business degree, and the world's kind of telling me to go work for a big business. And so that's what I'm doing. And I was lucky enough that I was really young, and the idea was a think tank organization. And so I interviewed like Fortune 100 executives, and then we would get them together to share ideas. And so from the learning experience, it was phenomenal because I got to interview like chief operating officers from all sorts of different Fortune 100 companies. But from a passion side, I was pretty miserable pretty fast. And so I didn't like being indoors all day. I didn't like being on the phone all day. Um, and I wasn't able to use my entrepreneurship side or my physical side. And so my cup was being depleted pretty fast. It wasn't a cup filling experience for me. And my wife was going through kind of the same journey. She got a marketing degree and was working for a marketing agency. And so we were kind of struggling. Just, life was good, but we were certainly not um, at rest with our situation of work, even though on paper it was a phenomenal scenario. And so we ended up going to Ethiopia at that time on a short-term mission trip through our church. So our church asked for volunteers to go to Ethiopia 2 weeks, and we signed up and really didn't know what to expect. We'd never been there before. And we went to Ethiopia, and for 2 weeks we worked with kids that were 18 and under. Many of them were 12 and under, and they lived and slept in the landfill. So it would be analogous to like any big city dump in America. It would be like if there was 200 kids that lived there. So trucks are coming in and out, dumping stuff, and kids are kind of sleeping in the corner, looking for scraps to eat out of the trash and looking for plastic to recycle to make an extra few bucks. And so for 2 weeks, we just hung out with those kids. And then we came back home. And when we came home, we were pretty wrecked. So we were struggling with like post-trip depression, and we're back in America with everything we could possibly want and nothing to really worry about, awesome jobs, and we didn't have any kids at the time. And we knew that like the corporate America stuff really wasn't for us, but we weren't really sure what to do about it. And we just knew we needed to go back, and we didn't know what that looked like. And so we actually ran into a guy in Bozeman that we didn't know existed, and he had been building orphanages in Uganda since 2001. And Joseph Kony is this infamous warlord that had gone through Uganda and Sudan, and using child soldiers had killed 600,000 or so people. And so Uganda and southern Sudan were just full of millions and millions and millions of orphans. And so he was a stockbroker in Bozeman, and he went and his life got changed and he was devastated. And so he quit to start this organization that was building orphanages in Uganda. And so we met up with him and decided that we were going to quit our jobs and go to work for him. So my wife and I both quit, and we both went to work in Uganda. And it was the coolest, most rewarding, funnest, awesomest job we've ever had. And it was a really cool concept. It was much more than an orphanage. It was a campus, and the campus had 240 kids. And the whole idea behind it was to teach the kids entrepreneurship skills and teach them leadership skills so that they could be future leaders of Uganda rather than being stuck in the orphanage system for the rest of their lives. So we had all these little small businesses. We had a pineapple business that the kids ran, and we had a dairy milk business that the kids ran, and we had a chicken business for eggs that the kids ran, and a primary school, a secondary school, a church, and it was just so cup filling because it's like 24/7 adventure. You never know what's going to happen. You can't control anything. And then you're outside pretty physical all the time because it's a farming operation. And so we thought we were going to do that forever. We were pretty happy there. We built a guest house there. And then my wife got pregnant there. And so she got pregnant with my oldest daughter. And we were planning on just flying home to Bozeman, having our oldest daughter, my first daughter, be born, and then staying with family for a few weeks and then flying back over to Uganda and going back to work. And we were just fairly naive. We didn't know what a baby was actually going to do to our lives. But it seemed like a good plan. And we flew home to Bozeman when my wife was like 9 months pregnant. And when my daughter was born in Bozeman, like instantly I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go right back right away. Just like it was, so much different than I thought it was going to be, so much more powerful than I thought it was going to be. And then just the logistics and like the safety and the health concerns of getting a baby back over there were a lot. So then we were stuck in Bozeman when we didn't have a plan B because we just were sure that we were going to go right back to work. And that's where all these ideas for Mountain Tough started kind of coming together. And really that's when the light bulb moment went off for me. So we were back without that plan B. And I'd always been into the archery, elk hunting, and I'd always been really into the physical fitness preparation for it. And I founded Mountain Tough in 2016, and no one in the world at that time was training the backcountry athlete, especially the hunter. And so it started really bootstrap. It's crazy how bootstrap it started. I sketched out the little logo, which is still our same logo today for Mountain Tough. And then our buddy turned it into a logo on the computer. And then I hung a flyer in the bow shop that just said, "Hey, I want to train backcountry hunters." And then it started in a park. So we started in the park behind my house, and we were doing like pull-ups on the monkey bars and lunging across the soccer field. And it's just kind of grown and grown from there. So it's been a pretty crazy journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I just have one follow-up question, Adam. I know you must have so many. One follow-up question, which was, what in doing that transition, and I heard, obviously the birth of your first child must have had an enormous effect on you and your wife. And it, like, in some ways it seems very obvious and rational from the experience in your life why you would do Mountain Tough. What was the connection was there a connection? You said that, in the calling from the work overseas to Mountain Tough, what was the calling in that? I'm just really curious how that traveled through after that experience, or in what ways.
For sure. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because that's a big detail that I didn't include. The calling was there for sure. So when kind of around that time the light bulb went off for Mountain Tough, the backbone behind that was I learned so much going through that corporate America phase of my life. And then I learned so much going through the Uganda phase and season of our life that I had these really obvious learnings from those experiences that I was I was only going to focus my time and efforts on stuff that was really, really helping and serving people and helping people transform their lives in one way or the other. And so that was a big kind of black and white obvious thing from me, from the difference between corporate world and the Uganda world, was with the, like, my limited time here on earth with the resources I have. I'm going to find a way to do something that's actually helping people. And then the second thing for me was that I need to do something that's somewhat physical. And so with Mountain Tough, I knew that A, it had to help people transform their life, and B, I needed to be more active than a typical office job. And so that's kind of with those experiences, I knew that, like, those, as long as I got those two things right, I could keep my cup full.
Okay, just one more, because and then I'm definitely going to
No,
hand
your
it over,
questions are
because
exactly what I'd be
you
asking, Miriam. So
you
keep
you
going.
mentioned, no, it's just that you mentioned your wife. It was a joint decision. You know, your wife has traveled with you on this journey, and you were
Mm-hmm.
going on the corporate journey, you know, separately but together, and then you jointly made the decision to go to Uganda. How has that relationship impacted kind of the starting of, or where does that fit into the starting of Mountain Tough? I mean, I'm not sure if she's a hunter, or, you know, and yeah, I'm interested in that in terms of its influence on this next movement.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild because there's a whole other component of the Mountain Tough formation that we haven't got into yet. But one of the cool parts is when I met my wife, she was the passionate runner. So she loved running and really enjoyed long runs and got like the runner's high, and running was her thing. And for me, I loved the gym, and I was a gym rat, but I hated running because I would rather lift. And so when we met, she kind of started introducing me to more and more running and um, longer runs. And then I fell into the mental side of running. I fell in love with the mental side. And so we started doing marathons and ultra marathons. And I was really hooked on the mental component of, like, your whole body is telling you to stop, but mentally you have to find a way to keep going on the marathons and ultras. And she loved it. She loved just being outside and just running. And so that was a really key part of Mountain Tough, because we kept getting more and more into it. And then once we got into the ultras are usually 50Ks in the Rocky Mountain West. And so the 50Ks are always in the mountains, not always, but around here they are. And for for me, I was like, this is perfect. I'm running in the same backcountry, in the very same area that I'm going to elk hunt in later this year. And so I thought it was kind of the perfect training scenario for backcountry hunting, was mountain running. But the cool thing that happened was, we had one season where we were running a lot, and we did a lot of races. And then I hunted those same mountains that fall, and it was really obvious that too much running is a negative when it comes to packing out those heavy loads of backcountry hunting, because you lose all that strength that you're going to need for hunting for the heavy pack outs. And so that was another big light bulb moment for Mountain Tough, was that no one is training these athletes to a degree of specialization that other professional sports would do. And other professional sports like the NFL or the military is always going to train to the mission. So you break down the mission and train to that exact mission. But a lot of that whole concept came from my wife and the running that I was doing with her, which was pretty cool how it all came together. And then, the Africa experience completely changed her life trajectory too. And so when we got back home, she's always helped a tremendous amount with Mountain Tough. She's never worked for Mountain Tough full time, but behind the scenes, she's doing a tremendous amount for Mountain Tough. But what she did do is, after her marketing degree that she was unhappy with, and then Africa, when she got home, she completely switched gears and became a nurse. And so she went back to nursing school, became a nurse, and then now she homeschools our two daughters. So it's pretty wild how many changes it created.
In retrospect, what was it about? And this might sound, I'm a master of obvious questions, seemingly obvious questions. So, but what was it about Uganda that shifted, like that planted the seed that is now Mountain Tough? Does that make sense? I mean, there's the obvious part for me is experiencing a whole different culture, a whole different way of life, a whole different socioeconomic situation. But that mental toughness part, and the spiritual, I'm curious about the mental toughness part, the spiritual part, what I heard you say, the refusal to kind of play the games of the world and really play, maybe God's game or your own game. Could you talk a little bit more about that? If there was anything that you haven't said yet about that, for you and your wife too.
Yeah, I think one way to boil it down would be that the Africa-Uganda experience led to Mountain Tough from the perspective of one of Mountain Tough's key objectives is to get people to do hard things outside of their comfort zone, because we know that's when all these magical life change moments are going to happen. And we know that it doesn't really matter necessarily what that hard thing outside is. But we know that if we can inspire someone, and then if we can train them a little bit, there's a really good chance that they're going to sign up and commit themselves to something really hard outside. And that doing something hard outside is when all the magic happens, and that's outside of our control. But a lot of that came from the Uganda experience, that we know that if you take some risks and do something physical outside, your life could look completely different. And in a lot of ways, that is what Mountain Tough is doing. Is we have so many people now, so many customers that are signed up, and they're training right now through the app on one of our programs, and they never plan on hunting. They never plan on hunting the rest of their life, or they plan on hunting 3 years from now, or they just want to do something a little bit harder. Maybe they want to run their first 10K ever. And that gets me so excited, because it doesn't really matter if it's backcountry elk hunting or like exploring the swamps of Florida or hiking through Canada, or it's the doing something hard outside is where all the magic happens. And just inspiring that action is a really important part of what we do.
And then how is that translated back to entrepreneurship for you? Like, maybe it hasn't been hard, but then you'd be the one person we've ever talked to that has had an easy run. How does all of that translate to starting a business and bootstrapping it, on top of that? What's the story there? How has it helped you with challenges, and what have the challenges been in getting
man,
to where you're now?
It's crazy. It's been not easy, but in a way it has been easy. The way that it's easy is because when it's your own thing, it's kind of like every strength has a dark shadow. So in entrepreneurship, when it's your own, that's a great strength because you have this energy to work on it 24/7, and you have this passion to work on it all the time, and you're thinking about it all the time. So the strength in that is you never, it's been 7 years now today-ish, and it's never really felt like work yet, which is a great advantage of entrepreneurship, is because it's your baby and it's your thing. It takes a lot for it to actually feel like work compared to past jobs I've had. The shadows in that are, it's hard to turn my brain off of Mountain Tough stuff, and it's hard to unplug because I'm thinking about it so much. But it is pretty amazing how like all the mental toughness work we've done inside and outside of the app, and then all the hunting experience, just how much crossover there is between the mental work and the entrepreneurship and a hunt. And so like a backcountry hunt is all about controlling what you can control and not worrying about everything else, being as prepared as you possibly can. And a big thing with backcountry hunting too is expecting that these crazy hits are going to happen. So just like in life, like we're just expecting that these hits are going to take us down. And if you expect them, they don't hurt quite as bad as if you act like they're not coming. And so all these little tips and tricks and mindset work that we've done for the business and for hunting, certainly 110% have helped me with Mountain Tough, because it's the same principles and the same philosophies. Like I think like building a business is very similar to a really hard hunt, and so is life. It's like it's one foot in front of the other and just keep getting back up. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, you were laughing just in case someone's listening and not seeing this. And just you go and you expect the hits, but you also expect the wins, and sometimes they don't come for a long time, right? Like, or we expect hey, this is going to work out, and it doesn't, so you have to try another strategy, or shift this a little bit that way, or go home and think about it for a couple of days and go back out there and try something completely different. I don't know if that's been your experience, but I don't know if that's how you would categorize our experience, Miriam, too. But you're on mute right now, Miriam.
Oh, and then you have the elk that just wanders out into the field one morning at dawn in front of you, you know, like in entrepreneurship, you have something that just can't, and it's interesting because, those moments is what really gives me faith. It's like those moments that, there is the preparedness. In my experience of entrepreneurship, there's the preparedness, like you do your work, but the big wins seem to just come in the miracle of life, in my experience. And it's that balance between what's in your, you've mentioned it a few times, what's in your control to prepare physically, mentally, spiritually for the hunt, for the journey, and then just be with what happens and move with it. That's kind of what I was hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot too around that. There's no failure if you're always learning. And so it's that falling forward concept. It's like, it's never a failure if it's just, hey, what can we learn from this? And apply those learnings moving forward, and just testing and adapting and learning and testing and adapting and learning.
What have you learned about yourself that you couldn't learn backcountry hunting, that you couldn't learn in your training, but you needed to learn through or even as a parent? Maybe, I don't know why I always conflate parenting with running a business, but maybe that's a false thing. But what have you learned about yourself that you couldn't learn anywhere else in your entrepreneurship?
I think the first thing there's been a lot for sure. I think the first thing that came to mind when you asked that question, that you can't really learn backcountry hunting, that I've learned through entrepreneurship, is leadership is such a learned trait. I think like leadership is hard to get good at unless you have opportunities to lead. And so because of that, I think it's such a learned trait and skill. And the dynamics of a team, and the dynamics of everyone on that team is a completely different individual, a different human with different personality traits that fire them up or shut them down. And so there's been a lot of highs and lows through that journey for sure around leadership. And I think entrepreneurship has really hit like one of my personality traits pretty hard, is that I'm a people pleaser. And so I always want people to like me or be happy. And in business, that gets hard when you have to make really tough decisions. There's going to be some people that aren't happy. And so kind of navigating through that's been a big part of my journey, because I think if I lean too heavy on the people pleasing side of my personality, then you're not protecting the mission. And if you protect the mission, then there's going to be some people that are upset, because the mission has to move forward and the mission has to succeed. And so a lot of cool things there that are hard to learn when you're outside hunting by yourself.
And you've built up it seems like a pretty big team. You have a lot of coaches and a lot of, from what I see anyways, a real diversity of perspectives, everything from military and law enforcement style training to, this is just on the coaching side, to, whatever brilliance is happening on the back end, where you're, growing really quickly and creating partnerships and maybe sponsorships. How have you pulled that team together, and how have those people come into this? Because you've got that, there's like a sweet spot where there's that diversity seems to be really shining and helping out the mission.
Yeah, it's been cool. It's been really cool. I think the coolest thing that I've seen is Mountain Tough has the most amazing team and some incredible people. And I think spiritually, like from the spiritual realm, like the right people um, always find us or we get introduced to them. It just seems like in a really cool fashion. And then the the thing that's happened a bunch, which is really awesome, is crazy highly talented senior experienced people that we've had the privilege of coming to work at Mountain Tough. They always make these crazy life changing decisions to come work at Mountain Tough because of the mission of transforming lives. So it's pretty cool that, like, because of the transforming lives mission, and that's our purpose, there's people that have left phenomenal organizations and phenomenal jobs to work at Mountain Tough. And I think it's that purpose. I think we're able to we're able to have a really strong, diverse team because people, they want to work for a strong purpose and they want a purpose behind what they're doing.
Go ahead. Let me ask my question here, and then you go ahead. Do you ever worry? I mean, we have people like that too. You know that, and this is not just at in our current organization, but in the past where that I feel so responsible. You know, like there's always this part of me that is like, oh, I hope it works out for them. You know, we've got they're leaving a long career, and you know, I guess that's a little bit of imposter syndrome or something. But as a leader, you know, I'm always kind of like, oh, well, I got to trust that that's their journey, and I'm going to do my best for them. We're going to do our best for them. How does that ever come up for you, where you feel that responsibility for people, especially when they make that life change, and it kind of, I mean, for me, it motivates me to be better,
Mm-hmm.
and level up our game a little bit. Yeah. How do you, I guess the big question I'm asking is, how do you hold that responsibility as a leader, when you do have these people who are committing their lives or a big part of their lives to your mission?
Yeah, I definitely have been through that. And I think the thing that helped me the most with that for sure was just analyzing it from a realistic viewpoint. So I think I was struggling with that big time in a season of life last year where just the weight and the pressure of taking care of a really talented team seemed like a lot a lot of pressure because you don't want to let those people down, and they're such remarkable people that you do feel overwhelmed that they're with you. But I think I have a lot of peace about that now just by doing some work on that. And the thing that helped a lot was like just going to that 30,000-foot view and thinking about it from the perspective of like, these are really remarkable senior, highly talented people. So if Mountain Tough were to shut down today, the likelihood is those people are going to be really, really fine in a couple days. Like that, because of who they are, they're going to have there'll be no difficulty of them finding the next best thing. And that helped me a ton because that was kind of a heavy pressure for a while. But I think looking at it from the highest level in a realistic viewpoint, like they're gonna be totally fine wherever they're at. That's because they're such talented people.
Um, it feels from the way that you're talking that the mission of transforming lives is really strong at Mountain Tough. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about the strength of that mission and how it's so strong. And And, as you've watched it, obviously being born and develop, how that, if that strength has waned, or, what, or it feels very central. And I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it's really central. And I think it's stronger now more than ever. I think the we first saw it in the early days of Mountain Tough as like a four-legged stool. So if you have like a bar stool with four legs, what we knew early on in Mountain Tough's history was that, like, if those four legs are physical fitness, mental toughness, and nutrition, and then spiritual health, it was really obvious that you can't be really strong on one of those legs and not have the other legs, or that bar stool's going to fall right over. And I think that's what was really common in the world and really common in physical fitness training, was that a lot of organizations are only focusing on the physical. And so if you have that bar stool and you have the physical leg, and you're creating some of the most elite athletes in the world, regardless of the industry of the athlete, if they don't have the mental leg or the spiritual or the nutritional, that bar stool is going to fall over. And so we knew that a holistic human that's focusing on those four areas is gonna be a high performing individual for the long term. And so we wanted to make sure that anyone we were working with, that we were able to create a, a trajectory change in their life, but also help them with a sustainable path moving forward. So if you only focus on the physical, a lot of times that's that's a that's a big transformation for a short period of time. So you can take someone who's really out of shape and you can get them really in shape, but that's probably not going to last for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years if you're not focusing on the other parts of that stool as well. And I think there's just so many conversations happening around our team, and they've been going on for so long that mission is really clear for everyone involved, that's kind of what we're working on.
And how do you apply that internally? So I hear that would, I imagine, and I know from my experience of Mountain Tough, that influences the material on the app, which I'm highly appreciative of. But how does that how does that how does that guide you in terms of the way that your team works together, and how you approach that?
Yeah, we've gone up and down on that for sure, where we have gone through seasons where we're just focused on work, and then we kind of call each other out on it when we're like, hey, we got to be living out what we're preaching. And you can get so consumed with work that sometimes you can neglect some of those own legs of that stool yourself, because we're so wrapped in with what we're doing. In one way, we're very fortunate because, like, if we're going to spend all week filming physical, spiritual, and mental content as a team, and then in a lot of ways naturally that's happening just because that's what we're working on. But we have to check ourselves on that quite a bit, because otherwise we're just working all the time and we're not living our own ethos that we're preaching. So it's been a battle for sure. It hasn't been an easy answer. We definitely slip and fall on that one quite a bit.
I was going to make a comment more than a question, but and maybe we'll find out how it ties in. But on our side, we were working on leadership and teams and organizational culture, and sort of trying to avoid the physical side, or I don't think we really avoided the spiritual side because of we always kind of look at leadership as a spiritual journey, because you're always learning and you can't control, and there's a definitely a resilience or even a durability component to that too. But I think what we've seen, and this is why we sought you out as a partner in the work that we're doing, or at least to give people some way of saying, hey, here's a program that we recommend, is because if those other components, like if you're not doing something physical, it's going to affect your leadership and it's going to affect the culture of a team, because you just don't feel good. Or you're sick all the time. Or maybe for me, that's just because I got a preschooler, but for my sniffles. And if you're not eating well, if there's not a nutrition, and you can't mandate that for a team, but definitely, you can open the door for people to say, hey, look, or getting out into nature, getting outside is going to make a team better. Right. And those you can't really do leadership and team development if there's not that, if all those aspects of wellness are not at least possible there. So I was just going to kind of comment on that. I think, as we were talking about leadership earlier and the challenges of that and how they kind of go back and forth. It's definitely something that Miriam and I are looking at for our clients and for the people that we're working with. That, hey, you can't it's not a mental game. I mean, it's not only a thinking game. It's not abstract. It's actually got it's in this body. It's in how we interact with the natural world, etc.
Yeah, the mind body connection is so powerful. And then just all the hormonal responses that happen to risk taking or unexpected elements. So like being outside and someone slips and falls and there's like an adrenaline response, and then navigating through that as a team and figuring out how to calm that down or speed that up depending on the scenario. Those are hard to replicate, just kind of being stuck in an office all the time. And I think that the unexpected unknown that being outside with your team throws at you is where like that real leadership shines, because like taking a team outside and then a blizzard rolls in, it's like these leaders emerge that you weren't even sure were there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's so true. And I want to go back one step, because you said something which really caught me, which is that you call each other out in your team. How did you get to the point? Was that always the case where you were able to call each other out? Because that's not always, people sometimes feel afraid of, I shouldn't say that, but you have the capacity to call each other out. Where did that come from? How did you create that?
Where I think that came from, which is really cool, is that we are so fortunate. One of the ways we are unlike many organizations in the world, and we're very lucky because of this, and it's because of what we do. But since the beginning of Mountain Tough, so for 7 years now, the staff has trained really hard together at noon. And so it's never been like mandatory. So if we hire someone, they don't have to make the noon workout. But organically, it's not cool. Organically, it's just happened where anyone who's joined the team, they have the opportunity to come down and train with the staff at noon. And Mountain Tough local workouts, we do a lot of team workouts where you're counting on your team members. And so if we're doing a team workout, the whole team knows if you're going 100%, and the whole team knows if you're sandbagging, or the whole team knows if you're dying. And so we do a lot of workouts that are like 2-on-2 or 3-on-3. And we've been doing those for so long that it makes a really tight bond, because we're like working through adversity every single day, just in that little micro environment. But because we're working through adversity together as a team every single day, it makes working through adversity like on a project much easier. It's kind of funny because we never strategically designed it that way. It's just like we're a fitness company, and so we have to be working out every day. But the things that has led to has been pretty phenomenal, because like you can tell if a teammate is struggling with something at home that maybe you need to check in on them with, just based on their performance in the gym. So you can see someone's body language, you can see how they're carrying themselves. And so you're like, oh, I probably should check in with that guy based on what I saw today. And so, and then just like all great teams know that like the team gets stronger through adversity, and us just being able to do that day in and day out has been really, really special.
I think, Marion, we're going to need to institute that both for our team and
well, you already do it to me.
Yeah, we don't have our own gym. We need our own.
We need our own gym. We need our own gym. I want to just, one comment on that is there seems to be an incredible amount of care as well as the calling out. What I hear and what you just said was there's care, and so I just want to witness that. Yeah, which is also unusual.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. It's pretty cool.
Miriam, if I ever leave We Are Arms Circle, you know where to find me. I'll be over at Mountain Tough. Okay. I wanted to, I think, kind of rounding up here, and I know I hope we get another conversation in the future, because there's so much here and it's really inspiring. I'm curious what's on the, like, what you're learning about, what you're excited about, both for the company, what maybe there's some things that you're working on that are new, or even just developing what you've got already, and for yourself, like where's your edge right now? What are you excited about in your own learning, in your own development?
Yeah, for me personally, it's pretty cool timing. I think that question is exciting to me in this season of life, because I think I realized this year that I've been working too much, and I think that I didn't really notice the like negative impacts it could have been having on me and my family. And a few friends and just natural occurrences happened that kind of opened my eyes to that. And so what I noticed this year is like everything that led me down my journey, and everything that led to Mountain Tough, and everything that led to like some of the greatest moments of my life have been rooted in adventure. So just a lot of different adventures, whether those are like maxing out a weekend here in Montana, or taking really big trips, or just like signing up and going to Africa. Most of all these really awesome things in my life have happened out of just signing up for some sort of adventure, whether that's running or skiing or hiking or hunting or traveling. And that's always been a huge part of my life. And for like a decade, my wife and I would like we'd be gone like all weekend and doing something cool, and then getting home Sunday night and going back to work for the week. And in the last 2 years, especially, um, work has been kind of all consuming, not in a bad way. I think just because it's been so much fun and so good. But what that has done is it has like minimized my adventure schedule way down, which just recently I've seen negatively impacting my life. So like, because I'm like an idea guy and a visionary guy, and like I'm always looking for big game changing ideas, those ideas don't really come when all that adventure is shut down. And I'll notice that like if I just go,
Yeah.
if I travel and go on one 3 day really cool trip, I come home with like 50 new ideas. And so a big priority for me this year is just re-engaging with a lot more of that adventure. And it's everything that we're preaching to. So it's kind of me calling myself out because work has become so consuming. And then I want to make sure that that adventure spirit is passed down to my daughters too. So like our priority for this year is lots of big adventures that our daughters are part of, so that they're exposed to a lot of those same things. Right. So personally, I'm really excited for 23 and 24. And then business wise, um, one of the most exciting things I think about for the business is the move. We made the move to the native app last year. And so the first 5 or 6 years of Mountain Tough's history, all our customers accessed our training digitally, but it wasn't through the app. And then we migrated to the native app last year. And so we're like month 14 of the native app. And the community has just grown and grown and grown and grown. And what I think is so exciting is that in the app model, because it's a subscription, we can deliver very powerful micro content, where before the app,
Yeah.
we would only build like a big program for sale. But with the app, since everyone is a subscriber, it changed the game, because we could, we can deliver any sort of micro content that we feel is going to be powerful to the community without it ever being for sale. It's just part of the ecosystem. And so we're working on a lot of really cool micro content for this year, because the big training programs will always be a priority, but it's the micro content that really like rounds out the holistic part of our business.
And now I have a whole bunch of questions about ecosystem and things like that. Kind of more the nitty gritty of it, because I've definitely experienced that, and that's one of the reasons I've kept looking at you all as a business from the things that you're doing there. But I don't want to go there, because that'll take us down a whole nother track. I couldn't help but think that it sounds like the last 2 years have been the adventure that you've been doing is Mountain Tough, and maybe 7 years, but being all in as an entrepreneur and taking something to the next level like you have, that feels like a huge adventure. It might not be as physically fulfilling. And maybe it is, but yeah, just do you feel that way? Do you feel like entrepreneurship is its own adventure? It's just taxing, a taxing one?
I would say at first entrepreneurship felt like a huge adventure, for sure. I would say like the first 3 years felt like the same as like taking a leap of faith and in traveling somewhere crazy, just because it's so unexpected and everything's so new. I think the last couple of years felt a little different, where I think it was finally a season in my entrepreneurship journey where I needed to put a few more checks and balances in place to where I'm able to shut some of that off,
Yeah.
like at night. Just because I don't think it's, I might be wrong, but I don't think long term it's healthy for me to be thinking about the business 24/7. I think I need some escapes here and there. And but I think there at first it definitely felt like an adventure, where now it's like I need to find some ways to unplug and recharge a little more.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's when I'm just riffing here, but maybe that's when that sort of creative, I mean, Miriam's kind of like this, really, really good at getting things going and really in. And then when things sort of start stabilizing and Miriam, contradict me here, but things start stabilizing and become more, things start really rolling. You're like always looking for the next big idea. And that's when it gets challenging. But at the beginning, it's like anything's possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's I for me personally, I do share that adventure spirit, and I think also for me, when it does start to stabilize, and this has its shadow for sure, I also start to look for the next adventure, the next idea, as well as the kind of physical adventure. And I think now, being a little bit older, I relate. I look for the adventure actually in my, particularly at the moment in my personal journey with my kids.
Yeah.
And like what I want to give them. I think at the beginning of entrepreneurship, it was about creating something in the world, seeing so much going on in the world that, I felt a very strong calling to do my part, and that would teach my kids, because they would see that I was, even vicariously, they would pick up that it's important to use what you have and take action on it.
Yeah.
And now, having teenagers, I'm like, I need to be here. I need to actually, physically be present and be by their side. And so it's interesting. Adam used the parenthood and the entrepreneurship, and it's like, it's what I hear and what you said is just listening and always being aware of when it needs to be changed. And it may come back to the business, but now it's about, okay, now it's important to be with a family and actually go on the physical adventures with them and give them that experience. And, it's that balancing that I'm hearing. It's never right or wrong either way. It's listening to the moment. And you use the word season a lot, which I loved. It's in this season. And I think that's another thing, hunting or being out in the wild has given me, at least, is like, this is a season and this is what's needed in this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
So we have a 3-month, Mountain Tough has given everyone that listens to this a 3-month free pass to check out everything that we've been talking about today, from the physical to the mental to the spiritual training that's happening on there. And we're going to back that up 100% and say, definitely check it out. It's probably not for everybody, but I think most of the people that are listening to this, if not all, are going to get something really powerful out of it. And some, I think, are like, we've seen a lot of people want to get really into it and want to continue just like us. And then people that come on our programs, the bigger adventures that we do around leadership and training in group stuff and organizational development, are going to get a longer, more fulsome experience too. With 6 months, I think, is what we're going to be able to offer. So we really appreciate that, because we're just like you. We want to be helping people transform their lives, and we, like I said, we've sort of avoided the physical component to it. We've avoided the nutritional component, and we found a really good match with what you're offering. So all of that's going to be there in the podcast notes and on our website. And we just really appreciate that. And we appreciate how generous you all have been. And Dustin, you have been with your time today and sharing your story, and sounds like a lot of things that you're doing to make the world a better place. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. And it's been really fun chatting with you guys and hearing what you're up to and making the world better and inspiring people yourselves. It's really cool.